At long last, welcome to the Barnyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Thursday edition of The Yard. I hoped to do the show yesterday. That was a plan. I had a lot going on. I've been trying to catch up all these baseball signees. I forgot that I had an ink therapy appointment. Nothing major, just some touch-ups and cleanups, that sort of stuff, a little filler, that sort of stuff. But, nothing major. But, so I had to go do that. And by the time I got back and took care of my dogs, and I was absolutely exhausted anyway. And anytime I get a tattoo, it kind of takes a lot out of me. It does. I guess it's the emotional energy that you exert at moments like that. And I've been in a chair so many times, you'd think I'd be used to it. But so we punted to today. We will be back tomorrow. And I've got a lot to say, a lot that we're going to talk about today. Some of it may hurt some feelings, and that's okay. That's the thing that I've learned about that, is that it is possible for you to get your feelings hurt and then continue on with life. That's a philosophy I think many people need to fully embrace. If you haven't heard it too, I was on the Message Board Genius podcast. I love that Twitter account. I was so honored. They DM me and say, "Hey Steve, we'd love to have you on the show." I jumped at the opportunity, and we recorded that, I guess, Tuesday night, and it came out this morning. It's episode 77 with Message Board Genius, and it was a great time. I love the account, and one of the reasons that I do is because it kind of provides, as I said on the show, some comedic value, right? It's like sometimes in the middle of our message board community, you kind of get used to the insanity that exists sometimes, and then when somebody else kind of takes it out of that world and puts it on Twitter, it becomes something of its own, and you kind of have to laugh at it. We've had some posts on there, our rival teams have, some of our competitors have. There's always a little something, but I love the account. I love it when the meltdown alerts, like all of a sudden somebody gets down in a ball game they've got no business losing, or at halftime, it's like, hey, let's leave him on the tarmac or whatever, fire everybody. It's great, but I love that account. And I wish those folks the most success possible with it. And if you don't follow Message Board Genius, I think you should. Life is so serious. What's life without a little whimsy, right? And so you kind of get a chance to kind of laugh at some other fans. And I won't pull up anything from today. You can see yourself. But I think they've got an Instagram account as well. I don't follow them on Instagram, but it's the Twitter account is absolutely fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. One of my favorite things that they do is when somebody has some ridiculously stupid coach search take. Like it'll be, okay, Matthew McConaughey is going to be, the head coach of Texas, right? And we're going to talk about Texas a little bit in the show, but and they'll caption it with trusted sources have informed Message Board Geniuses, that Matthew McConaughey is going to be the head football coach at the University of Texas. And so that kind of stuff, it just makes you laugh. But for all of you that subscribe to Gene's page, I love you guys, man. I do. And there have been a couple times that some of our posters have made it to MBG. And I just told them to be gentle with you as we move forward. But, it was a lot of fun. It really was a lot of fun. Be sure and check that out when you're done listening to the Boneyard. And I come on about halfway through, so you can skip ahead there. I don't know who their first guest was, but, everybody needs an opener, man. Whoever it was the glass tiger to my journey, because I killed it. But, thanks again to the fine folks at Message Board Geniuses. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company, too. I'm going to get in there probably tonight, maybe tomorrow. Probably tomorrow, because I got a full thing ahead of me. I got to continue to work on edits for the dude, and I got to get that finished up here the next couple days. That was my goal, to have all that stuff done by June 30th, and so we can kind of finish that up next week and get it off the print for you guys can have this great book in your hands. But I'm going to have dinner with Bulldog Burger Company soon. Probably get it to go because I like to eat with the wife. I don't know how you live your life, but I don't like to eat alone. And sometimes in life I have to, but I don't like to eat alone. And when I have the alternative, I'd rather go eat with the woman that I married, So I get it to go, bring it up there, and every time I go in, when Ian, my son, is there, everybody kind of turns and looks like, a bunch of cartoon characters, That's my son, and I love him, and I'm very grateful that he has an opportunity to work at a great organization like Bulldog Burger Company. He loves it. So if you're looking for a place to work, maybe a great place to consider. For those of you that have jobs or have disposable income, maybe you're rich, I don't know. Bulldog Burger Company is still a great place to take your friends, your family, maybe have a business luncheon or a night out with friends, have an adult beverage. 3 great locations to serve you: University Drive in Stark Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowwood area. Have the spring rolls as your appetizer. They'll make you and everybody around you better looking. It's true. It's in writing. It's on the menu, thanks to this show and the creative folks over at Bulldog Burger Company. I'm trying to decide what I want, right? You know, it's like I know that I'm going to have Bulldog Burger Company here in the next couple of days. What do I want, right? Because I start thinking, you know what, maybe I'll have the Freshman 15. I'm thinking, you know, I hadn't had that BLT salad in a while. Maybe I'll get that. Or maybe I'll just go crazy and just get like a whole order of spring rolls with like a side of onion rings, because you can do that too. It's great. Next time that you're thinking about having a night out, consider Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet, M-E-A-T. Okay, let's talk a little bit about, this Jim Schlossnagle Texas thing. The first thing that I would say is it's almost in many respects kind of overshadowed Tennessee winning the national championship. You know what I'm saying? Like when we won it, like there was no other major story in college baseball to kind of take the spotlight off of us. So we basked in the glory of that for weeks, maybe even a year. But we did. Tennessee has won the national championship, and all of the headlines are about Texas A&M and Texas and A&M players going in the portal, and is there tampering? Is there a case? Should Texas A&M file a lawsuit? Was Jim Schlossnagle engaged with his responsibilities as the Aggie coach? I would suggest he has to be, because of the fact that not only did they make it all the way to the last game of the season, he had a time to run at the plate in the 9th inning. It's not like the guy was mailing it in. Now, he may have had one foot out the door, but let's be honest about this. Tennessee was better than A&M. It was a great series, don't get me wrong, but Tennessee was the best team in the country. And we talked about that throughout the year. You know, Kentucky was doing so well, and Tennessee just kind of hiding like that cottonmouth in the reeds, baby, just kind of out there just hanging out. Nobody's paying attention to them. And then late in the year, they kind of figure some things out. They make a run. They share the SEC title with Kentucky, end up being the number 1 seed in the tournament. They become the first number 1 seed since 1999 to win the College World Series. And nobody's talking about it. I mean, I guess in Knoxville they are, but nobody in college baseball is talking about it. All anybody is talking about is Jim Schlossnagle leaving A&M for Texas. Now think about this for a second. If we had won the national championship in 21, which we did, and let's say the very next day Chris Simonis leaves us to go to Oxford, and he takes Landon Sims and Logan Tanner with him. You ever looked at it in those lights? Think about that for a second. This is unprecedented. Number one, you don't have a lot of big names in college football move around. Or baseball, excuse me. I'm transitioning into football mode, trying to. But you don't have that happen very often. It just doesn't happen on the Power 5 level. It's happened twice at Mississippi State. You went out and hired John Cohen away from Kentucky, and you hired Chris Simonis away from Indiana. But let's be honest about that. Even though Cohen had won the SEC at Kentucky, would you say John was a big name? Well, I would venture to say John was probably comparable to what's happening at Schlossnagle, except he didn't go to a rival. And Chris Simonis, of course, coming to us from the Big Ten, not really a crazy baseball conference. And so, yeah, that was big, but it was nothing like this. And not to mention, too, if people don't understand, too, guys, Texas A&M, prior to this year, had absolutely no success in Omaha. None. You can go back and look at the numbers for yourself. Their record in the College World Series was absolutely pathetic. Pathetic. And now all of a sudden, you go get Jim Schlossnagle, who may have done a better job with the transfer portal than anybody in all of college baseball. It's true. And I don't just mean the fact that he got Braden Montgomery. Had some help there. But I mean, you go back and look at this list, man, and look at the guys, on this roster, and let's do that together, shall we? I'll pull that up, because I think sometimes that's kind of, some people look at this and say, you know what, they got Braden Montgomery. Well, they won the national championship without Braden Montgomery. Now, I don't think that they get there without Braden Montgomery, but it wasn't just Braden Montgomery that got them there. Okay, there was a very talented roster around them. It wasn't a one-man gang, and that's interesting to look at. And it's so interesting as I pull up the Texas A&M thing, they've already changed their default to 2025. Way to be forward-thinking there, guys. Okay, so I had all this written down a while back, but one of the guys that was kind of an unheralded star on this team for them, he had a great weekend against us, is Ali Camarillo, a guy really from Chula Vista, California. And it's fun to say that, right? Chula Vista. Say it along with me. Chula Vista, California. I mean, just you have to say it with your chest. But, he makes the move from Cal State Northridge to A&M and had a good year. Probably headed to Texas now too, but that's big. You look at Hayden Schott, right? Another guy who's now in the portal, which I don't know how much time he has left, and he may even be drafted. But the Ivy League, they don't have the grad transfer athletic programs up there. You can't continue to play. Transfers over from Columbia after his senior year. I mean, it's like, again, I look at the numbers here, and so it's so interesting. Like he was at Cypress College, which is a junior college, for a while. So I don't know. Maybe he does have a year left. I'm not going to go back and do all the research into Hayden Schott. But where would they have been without Hayden Schott? And then Gavin Grahovic, not a transfer, but he was a freshman, and he was a guy too from Orange, California. Not as much fun to say as Chula Vista. It's not. El Segundo, California. Shout out to Fred Sanford. But Gavin Grahovic is a guy, his hitting coach. A lot of people thought Gavin Grahovic was going to go to Arizona State, ends up going to A&M, and his hitting coach is going to Texas. So Grahovic, barring something totally unforeseen, is going to Texas. And a lot of people wonder, hey, what about Caden Sorrell? He was a former top 100 player from Flower Mound, or Highland Village, Texas, went to Flower Mound Marcus High School. That's a guy, too, that's in the portal. Probably heading to Texas. Noah Cain did a great job for them. He truly did a great job. And then people wonder about Jace Laviolette. Well, Jace Laviolette was originally committed to LSU, and when Noah Cain got the job at A&M, he followed Noah Cain. So it's reasonable to think that he may go to Texas. Now, it's not a done deal, and some of the guys that are in the portal now for Texas A&M will come out of the portal. It's like you go in just to kind of see, number one, you're going to get paid. But also, too, like if A&M, once they hire a coach, they'll have some meetings and they'll probably come up with some money and guys will stay. You'll have some guys pull out. But immediately when these guys go in the portal, people are like, hey, we got to go get them, we got to get them. Steve, we got to get them. It's just not realistic for a lot of these guys because of the fact many of these decisions are likely already made. Not to say that we're not trying. Don't get me wrong. We're not just going to throw our hands up in the air and say, well, we don't have a chance. We've reached out, and we will. Continue to do so as we work through the portal here. But I want to speak, if I can, extensively about my thoughts about this, right? There's a lot of things, a lot of strong opinions out there. One of the things that I think nobody's talking about, too, is what about these guys that grew up wanting to be Aggies, right? It's like, hey, I'm choosing A&M because it was my lifelong dream to be a Texas A&M Aggie. Many of us had the same dream involving Mississippi State. And so you're like, hey, I grew up cheering for this team. I'm going to take my talents up there, and I'm going to make this the best that I can possibly be. And so you show up there at A&M, and all of a sudden, Noah Cain, Jim Schlossnagle, they come in, they start adding some pieces. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, this is what I came here for. I came here to make this program great. And now these coaches are surrounding me with better talent. And now the coaches are leaving me and taking the talent with them. Nobody's talked about that either. What about those guys that are out there on social media saying, you know what, hey, I came here to be an Aggie, not necessarily a Jim Schlossnagle disciple. And there's a lot of bitterness. Deservedly so. This is a near unprecedented situation. And I go back to, I don't know who the writer was from Texas Ags. I know Olin Buchanan, to his credit. Olin Buchanan drove to Austin for the press conference and asked Schlossnagle some of these questions in a press conference, and good for Olin. And I suspect the fine folks at Texas Ags and their subscribers are probably like, you know what, that's our guy right there. He could have sat here and just wrote one of these everybody sucks columns, but instead he goes over there and he has Schlossnagle answer this question face-to-face in front of the nation. That's great journalism. It is. Because nobody, from, in all due respect, but nobody in the Texas media is asking that question, right? Nor should they. But I go back to what Schlossnagle said, and again, I don't know who the reporter was at Texas Ags. He asked the most obvious question in the room. The most important question of the night was asked to Schlossnagle, and he had to know that question was coming. And rather than handle it like a professional, he goes, well, I think it's really selfish of you to ask that question. You know what, Coach? It's my job to ask that question. And this isn't about, hey, why did you call a hit and run here? Why didn't we pitch out there? Why did we pinch hit this guy over that guy? No, that's a moment. This is a moment in time that is going to change the trajectory of the Texas A&M program that had finally gotten to near the top of the summit of college baseball. And you're leaving us for your rival. And you have the gall and the arrogance to tell me that I'm selfish for asking that question? I have an obligation to my readers. I've got an obligation to the fans of Texas A&M, the people, the 12th man, the people that you have begged for support financially and attendance. And my obligation is to them, even if yours no longer is. So I'm going to ask that question. And I commend the person for asking the question and then showing some professional decorum after that terrible answer from Jim Schlossnagle. And I've read some people out there, they're like, well, that's not the time or the place. When is the time or the place? It's not like we get a chance to just go call on these coaches every single day. There was no press conference scheduled for the next day. This is the post-game press conference following the National Championship, and you know a decision is imminent. And Chris Del Conte and those guys released the news the day of the final that they were moving on from David Pierce. Now, it's been widely known that David Pierce hadn't been in the building in 2 weeks. Everybody knew David Pierce was fired. All the discussion was about Tony Vitello. And I'm told Tony actually got an offer from Texas. Now, they may not have come to terms on it, but, why would Tony leave now? Tony's got everything he wants. They're building him a new stadium, and the people at A&M say, hey, we're building a new stadium too. We're renovating what we have, and you should have a long time ago. It's gotten really antiquated, Aggies. But I have a lot of sympathy for the folks at Texas A&M. And we joke about it sometimes too, like the little graphic we had made about Revelry going in the portal and transferring to Texas. It's fun. But the reality of it is when you look at what's happened here, and listen, I don't begrudge anybody for taking a job to better their situation, to put them in a better place to feed their families. None whatsoever. But I'll tell you this, I didn't know Jim Schlossnagle was 50 until today. And I got to say, Jim, I look a lot younger than you. Of course, I'm not coaching college baseball, but it's interesting. You start thinking, okay, it's the next job. It's probably the last stop. So I have to get the best possible financial situation for my coach. But the way this was handled was very tacky. I've got some friends that are great friends with Chris Del Conte. They are. And I hear he is a great person. And maybe I'm taking this out of context, but him tweeting out the picture of the cemetery yesterday, I think is pretty tacky. And maybe there's some context about that I don't know. But to tweet a picture out after all this is going on, and my inference is, and again, I may be completely off base here. And to me, it's like he's saying, you know what, A&M's dead. And you know what, there's some people out there that love Twitter drama that would say, you know what, hey, that's pretty funny. I think it's funnier coming from me or you. I don't think it's funny coming from a sitting athletic director in the Southeastern Conference. Those are my opinions. John Cohen would not have done that. Zach Selman wouldn't do that. Scott Strickland certainly wouldn't do that. I just trust the people that are in these professional roles to be professional, right? And listen, we tried to use a certain amount of professional decorum in our line of business too. Sometimes we can have some fun. Sometimes we troll Ole Miss folks. We do. I mean, part of that's letting you guys know that we're one of you too. But I think that's taken a little bit too far. And again, maybe I don't know the full significance of that. Maybe I don't. Maybe there is a context clue that I'm missing. But it's rather interesting. Let's just say that. But I certainly have some sympathy for what's happening at A&M, because what a roller coaster of emotions, right? And you kind of make that deal with yourself, right? It's like, you know what? Even if he leaves for Texas, man, if we win this national championship, I'll be okay. If we just win this game, I'll be okay. I promise I'll be okay. I'll be pissed, but I'll get over it, because at least I can say, you know what? He led my team to a national championship. Well, then you don't win, and then you lose your coach. And now you're losing a bunch of players off your roster, these same players that you loved and felt that were with you forever, and they were part of your family, and you bought your kids their jerseys, and you're like, hey, here we are. And now they're going to Texas. That's tough, man. It is. That's a tough thing to have to explain to your kid. Can you imagine, being 8-year-old you and go out there and all of a sudden WLBT is reporting Rafael Palmeiro is transferring to Ole Miss? We didn't have all these, camera phones back then. You had to go get your film developed, and it was a big deal when we had the 24-hour photo. That was great. But my point being is that this is a sign and a half how college athletics has changed. And there are a lot of players out there that don't feel beholden to a program. And many of them feel beholden to a coach. Not to say that one's wrong or the other, or one's right. But this is one of those things here you look at and say, man, this is terrible. And a lot of people want to know, hey, well, who's going to get that A&M job? It's interesting. I read some media accounts that say, oh, they've got money to spend. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. If they really had that money to spend, why wouldn't they have made a deal to keep Schlossnagle? And I understand that he and Del Conte, of course, have a relationship that dates back to TCU. I get it. I understand that aspect of it. I do. And I also understand, too, Trev Alberts is a football-first guy at A&M. And there's been some budgetary things at A&M that probably wouldn't sit well, with a coach, especially when you're having the greatest year in school history, right? You think, okay, well, instead of my budget getting slashed, I should get more next year. I've had some other people in industry circles tell me, don't be surprised if it's not a big-name coach. Maybe an up-and-comer, maybe somebody from the G5. Could be, some other guys out there that, I've heard Savage's name from UCLA mentioned. I think it's a tough sell. But you know what? I think Paul Maneri is probably a tough sell in South Carolina too. That's just my take on that. You may feel differently. Paul retired, and then they bring him back, and say, hey, probably a CEO, helicopter-type coach. But I've heard Skip Johnson's name from Oklahoma kind of mentioned in all of this. And that's something that I think about, too, is like, hey, if I'm Trev Alberts, how do I satisfy my fan base? I don't know that you can. There's not a hire out there, I think, that you could make that is going to make anybody feel better about the situation. Because you know what Schlossnagle has done. You know what a great coach he has been. And now he has elevated his own stock and your profile of your program, and now he's taking it to Texas, your arch rival, a team that you beat in your regional, and you celebrated knocking David Pierce out there at Bluebell Park. That's a tough thing to live with, man. It truly is. I don't think you could go out. You couldn't hire Buck Showalter. You couldn't hire, for that matter, you probably couldn't go hire anybody out there, even in the pro ranks. They would say, hey, this changes everything. I don't think there's anything that can be done to satisfy the hurt feelings of A&M fans. And I don't mean that the way we open the show. There's some people that get their feelings hurt because that's their living, it appears. But this is an unprecedented situation. And no matter who you hire, there's going to be a segment of the fan base that's going to be underwhelmed. And it's not going to be fair to the new coach, but they're going to feel like they've taken a step back. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I've even seen some Ole Miss people pushing Mike Bianco for the job. I get it. I've seen some of our people on Twitter say maybe they'll hire Lamonis. But, I suspect this thing will happen quickly. I mean, the portal closes, guys, in, 5 days? And that's just, of course, you still got plenty of opportunity to sign players, but they have to declare. And so the players at A&M have to decide. And, of course, they can go in and come out, and I think many of these players that have gone in will come back out and ultimately stay at A&M. But those kids are in a tough spot, man. It's like, hey, I got to get in. Then you think if you're the new coach, say, I can't even really go out and go recruit in the portal because I got to go sit my guys down. And a lot of those guys are in the Cape or playing summer baseball somewhere. It's not like they're just down the hallway. And so the first thing you have to do is talk to your players and kind of figure out, okay, where are we? Are you interested in coming back? What do we need to do to get you back? And then, okay, we've got 10 players back. Okay, well, I got to go find 22 more guys. And so where are they? And so A&M, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, unless everybody pulls out and decides that they're going to stay, A&M's looking at a tough year next year, which will only magnify the frustration of A&M fans. I can't even begin to imagine having to sit down at this microphone and sit here and try to talk to you guys about a coach in any sport from Mississippi State leaving us at the peak of their success at our program and say, hey, guys, at Ole Miss. Could you imagine like if Dan Mullen had done that like right after the 14 season? Like we got number one in the country and we go to the Orange Bowl that year and you think, man, okay, we got Dak back next year, and then all of a sudden you find out that Dan Mullen's leaving, taking Dak Prescott to Ole Miss in 15. Right? I mean, it's like, again, it sounds so absurd, but that's what's happening. It's just happening in baseball. But no, I think Jim Schlossnagle, and not that he cares, right, what any of us think, but I think it's one of those things, too, from the recruiting standpoint, is that every other coach in the country, no matter what they say, everybody negative recruits. It's true. And if you don't, you're an idiot. I'm not saying the first thing you do is show up and say, well, you don't need to go to Arkansas because of this. But you sit there and you sell your program and you do some comparisons. Say, okay, here's what we've done. Here's what they've done. Here's what they got coming back. Here's what we got coming back. Here's where you fit here. And you can tell me if you think you fit in there, right? And so when every one of those college baseball coaches, especially right now with portal, you start sitting down thinking, okay, well, here's the deal. Here's how things have gone in the past. Here's what Jim Schlossnagle has done. And what's interesting, too, there is a bit of a revisionist history, too, about Jim Schlossnagle. I don't just mean as it relates to the Mississippi State job. There are a lot of poorly sourced people that swore to you that Schlossnagle was getting a job at Mississippi State. And I can promise you that my search source was better than yours. And you make whatever conclusions that you want to make about that. But I can promise you I was better sourced on that deal than most, if not all. And so I share that with you because I want to go back and look at some of these things too. Like we had some of this discussion yesterday over to Gene's Page message boards. And Slosh had a great run for a while at TCU. He did. He was great. And there's no other way to look at it. And that's one of the reasons so many of our fans wanted Jim Schlossnagle. So when they joined the Big 12 in 2013, okay, Slosh had already been at TCU since 2004. And he had gone to the NCAA tournament every single year. And they'd won a couple of regionals. Went to the College World Series in 2010. Pretty impressive, right? It's true. At TCU didn't have a rich tradition before him. I mean, the guy just coaches 2 years at UNLV and has one winning year. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. His first year at UNLV, he went 500. The next year, they win the Mountain West Conference and go to a regional. Went 24-6 in their conference, won 47 games that year. So he gets a job at TCU. And then puts together a very, very impressive streak. That streak of regionals snapped in 2013, the year Mississippi State played for a national championship with John Cohen. And they came right back. After that great run, they have one down year. They go 29-28, finish 500. The very next 4 years, they went to the College World Series. So to argue that Schlossnagle was not a great coach then is just to ignore the facts. And then there's some things that happen in his personal life. Not everything is for public consumption. I'm not going to dig into all the rumors and innuendos regarding all that. But 18, they miss a regional. 19, they make a regional and they get beat. And they finish the year 6 games over 500. Of course, 2020, we didn't have a tournament. They make a regional in 21. They don't win it. And so the last 4 years there, they didn't win a single regional after getting to the World Series 4 years in a row. And so one of the 4 years ahead, we didn't have a tournament. So we'll just say 3. The next 3 years, they didn't win a regional. 1 year, they didn't even go. And that's around the time that we're making a decision, guys. And there was so much of that involved. We're thinking, you know what, we're going to go hire a coach. And it's like Schlossnagle made so much sense on paper. We didn't hire him. We didn't. And there's some things I wish I could tell you about that, but I can tell you he did come back around later in the process, and after we had already identified Lemonis and said, okay, I want to come here. And the thing that I go back to, it's like one of the criticisms that people always made of Ron Polk is, you know, well, Coach just couldn't win the big one. We had a great program. We went to regionals regularly. We hosted regularly. Won the SEC or the SEC tournament, fairly regularly too. And they're like, as great as it was, Polk never won one. Well, in the glory days of TCU baseball, Schlossnagle never won one. And then now he goes to A&M and has a chance and didn't win it. And that's one of those things you begin to ask yourself. And people are like, oh, Steve, no, I'm not. No, you see it. How many times do we talk about Big Game Bob and people like that? They can't win the big game. They can get you there. They can get you to the altar, but they can't say, I do. They can't consummate the deal. And so you kind of begin to wonder about that. And people are like, oh, well, he'll just kill it at A&M. And he did a good job. Went to the College World Series in 2022. Got bounced out of a regional in 23. And they weren't a great team that year. Finished sub 500 in the league. And then this year, of course, they won 53 games. And came one big swing away from winning the College World Series. And now he's headed to Texas. And so, again, I fault nobody for improving their station in life. But there is always some untidiness when it comes to these coaching changes. And this one's just so much more emotional because of the fact that A&M was so close to glory and greatness for the first time. And now they've lost the guy who brought them there to the team they hate the most. It's crazy. It truly is. For today's Top 10 list, as always, brought to you by closewithblair.com. That's CLOSE with Blair, BLAIR.com. You know the way to go. Here's Blair's phone number, 601-500-2344, 601-500-2344. If you're looking for mortgage information, if you're looking to get to the closing table and you want to get it right the first time, go with Blair Chandler. He's one of us, has a place here in town, licensed in several states, season ticket holder in multiple sports. I like to keep business in the family when we can. And guys, getting a mortgage can be a very intimidating experience, especially the first time you do it. And life changes a little bit sometimes too. You start thinking, you know what, hey, maybe you've gone through a divorce. Maybe you've gone through a life reset. Maybe you're having to move closer to family due to a loved one. I don't know your needs, but I can tell you this. There'll be one less thing to worry about if you let Blair Chandler take care of the mortgage stuff for you. Maybe you've always dreamed of having a game day condo. It may prove to be more affordable than you think. Blair is creative when it comes to structuring these loans. He knows how to get it done to get you to the underwriting part of this process without a lot of drama, right? So you could use a lot of people. I'm just going to encourage you, as always, to go with Blair Chandler. We've had several Boneyard listeners that have closed loans through him. Again, that's 601-500-2344, closewithblair.com. All right, you got the first big presidential debate. I'll tell you guys, one of my favorite days of the year is the day after a presidential election. It's true. And one of the reasons why is because people lose their minds on social media in the months leading up to a presidential election. And there are so many people that are wrong. And I am okay with people being wrong. I will tell you this, that I have voted for the winner all but, well, I guess maybe I'm on a losing streak here. But nevertheless, I voted for the winner more times than not in my lifetime. And so I share that with you because the first big debate is tonight. Will you watch? I don't know if I'm going to watch or not. I've seen these tweets out there, and I don't know if they're true or not. They're going to have like a 1 to 2 minute delay, and I don't like that. I don't think there should ever be a delay. They said there was like a 7-second delay before. Now they're going to do 1 to 2 minutes. To me, that just smacks of malfeasance, man. It's like being in re-education camp. It's like we're only going to show you what we want to show you. I want the real deal, right? Just let me see it. What everybody has to say. Don't doctor it. Don't edit it. To me, that whole thing, if they're going to give a delay like that, then they're going to do something stupid. And they're going to try to manipulate this thing. And then there's going to be all this social media comments about how this answer was changed and this stuff, this was cut out. And things are going to be out of context. We are the American people. We are smart enough to decide on our own. Most of us are anyway. Just let us watch it. No delay. These guys are supposed to be presidential candidates. They should be the most polished debaters in the country. So stop trying to manipulate things. If that's true, I don't know that it is, but maybe it is. And if it's not true, then shame on the people to put it on Twitter. But that's a day in the life of social media, right? Somebody with a hot take or some breaking news that never quotes a source. But if they're really doing that, I don't like it at all. But in honor of the debate, I thought, you know what? Not that I want to get very political in the show. I am largely apolitical on the show, even though I vote in every election. Even like if we vote for dog catcher in Starkville, I'm voting. I don't know what you do, but I vote. And there are a lot of people that fought hard to give us the right to have representation and to give us the opportunity to vote. And I may be old school, but I believe that's the case. I've got a lot of thoughts about voting issues over the last 20 years or so that let me just say this. I know some other people, this is probably getting too deep in the reeds here and probably getting out of my lane a little bit. I'm just going to say this. If you don't have a picture ID, you shouldn't vote. That's all I'm going to say about that. That's all I'm going to say about that. If you are not responsible enough to have a picture ID, you shouldn't be voting. This my own opinion. And I know that I'm going to get somebody to say, but Steve, no, there is no excuse for it. You have to have a picture ID to do anything in society these days. And voting is one of the most important things that we do. And if you can't have one, you can't vote. Because I think it opens up so many potential issues, right? I mean, you can't cash a check for $5 without a picture ID. You can't sign up for benefits without an ID. It's true. You can't operate a motor vehicle without an ID, even though nowadays what you have a picture of it, but just I believe in integrity and accountability. I don't care who you vote for. I just hope that you vote. But in honor of the debate, I thought, you know what? We've got some great protest songs over the years. In my younger years, I was a lot more judgmental, a lot more outspoken about political issues. One of the things that I have learned is that no matter who is in the White House, that my livelihood and my life is in the hands of a greater authority than who's in office. But anyway, I remember, I grew up in the era too where we actually got out and did things. We didn't just put a flag on our Twitter bio or use a hashtag just to make ourselves feel better. You've done nothing. Just so you know, let me just say it right now. You have done nothing. Nothing by putting a flag in your Twitter bio. It accomplishes nothing. Nothing. Let me calm down. Here's your top 10 list. Top 10 protest songs, and maybe a couple of these maybe you don't know, and that's okay. I like people that speak out, even if they're wrong. I like people that are willing to say what they believe in, right, wrong, and different. We live in a country, we have the freedom of speech. We should exercise that, even if you're wrong. I respect your right to say it, and write it, and produce it, and put it on the screen, and rap about it, and sing about it. And I'll be honest with you, there have been some albums in my life I have bought, even that I never really listened to, just to stick it to the establishment, man. It's true. And that's a minor thing, but it's true. It's true. Number 10 for me, and I have not watched a documentary yet. I just haven't had time. Maybe now when I get done with all these edits, I'll have a chance to sit and watch it. I have not watched the Bob Marley movie yet. I'm a huge Bob Marley fan, more so of the man than the music, even though the music is great. But this is a guy that did a lot for his home country of Jamaica, and likely cost him his life. But he tried to bring peace and aid to the people in his native land. It is something that should be respected. But for Bob Marley, we're going get up, stand up for your rights. Number 9, this goes back to the Vietnam era. It's a very, very powerful song, and even though the vocal delivery is a little bit marginal, Barry McGuire is not a great singer, but he had a great message. It's the eve of destruction. Number 9. It's because of the fact they felt like the country was running off the rails. And there's a lot of people too, like even back then. I mean, like if you really do your research, and especially if you kind of do the where are they now stuff, there are a lot of people that flock to San Francisco and hate Ashbury, and they really were not activists. They were just people that needed to go, just needed a cause. They just needed a sense of meaning. And so they found that in that community. Because there's a lot of people too that feel on the fringes of society. And so they're always searching. They're searchers for their tribe. And there are a lot of people that probably couldn't have told you who was in the White House that just found some kinship with those people. And so it's like that today too. There's some people out there, it's like they're just looking for another cause to get angry about. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just, you saw it all during COVID, right? It's like everything out there. It's like, and now all of a sudden, there were experts on, on COVID, and then all of a sudden they became war experts, and they'll be election experts. It's just there's some people. I'm just a meager scribe. I know sports and music. Those are my limitations. I don't have a college degree. I went to college and decided to get married and dropped out. And next thing you know, we started having kids. So I didn't go back. And when Ian gets done, maybe I go back. But I'm not an expert on everything. I know a little about a lot, but I'm not going to sit here and talk to you about vaccinations and global pandemics and things of that nature. And think that I'm some kind of authority. That stuff just trips me out, man. It really does. Number 8. It's a great song here, man. And a lot of you have heard, you've heard the chorus of this repeated by others. And maybe you've never heard the original. It's Gil Scott-Heron's The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. It's great, man. It's great. You go listen to it. It kind of makes you laugh a little bit. Also makes you angry a little bit. It's a great song. It's different. It's kind of like a spoken word type thing. But I dig it. I think you will too. Number 7. This is one of the great rock protest songs of all time. It's been on this show many times. It's Black Sabbath's War Pigs. I'm an anti-war person too, but I understand that it's necessary at times. There's a lot of wars going on right now that I don't think are necessary. But again, I'm not an expert on that. I think once you've made your point, you defended yourself, it's okay for us to retreat and have some peace. Just my take on it. And I go back to, we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the show, but a little bit later on the list. But there's some things America's done over the years too, that to our own citizens, that's not good. Number 6, love this one. We've talked about this group on the show before, and these guys were geniuses. I mean, I don't think I'm going over the top here. And one of the things that I loved about them is they were more socially conscious in a time when it wasn't cool, right? Like nowadays, like there's so many people nowadays. It's like it's clickbait journalism, baby. It's all it is. And that's the thing too. People respond to authenticity. And there's another segment of people, they just want more fodder for the fire, right? They want something that's be spoken into a vacuum chamber or to an echo chamber, pardon me. They want something spoken out there that radiates back to them, that validates their opinion. One of the things I think you've got to do in life, and this is one of the things long-term recovery has taught me, is you have to test what you believe. And it's A Tribe Called Quest with We the People. Kind of a sad song in some parts, to be honest with you. Number 5, a band that I don't think ever had a sad day in their lives. A band that has been on the show too, but probably a band. This may not be a song that you know as well as some of the other stuff in the catalog, but it's The Clash, Know Your Rights. The Clash is great. They're great. And the thing about them, they didn't have this overprocessed sound. There was a genuine quality in what they did. It resonated with people. There were a lot of people more talented than The Clash, but the passion in which they delivered their message mattered to people. All right, number 4, a song that maybe you don't think is a protest song, but it is. And it's from a band that maybe isn't heralded as much in America as they should be. They've had some lineup changes. I love the new stuff, but I go back to the stuff we got in late 80s, early 90s. But it's a title track from Queensryche album Empire. Now, this is a phenomenal album, to quote Ben Howland, but this song is basically about government spending. It's about all the problems in society, and really, in many respects, it's a song about law enforcement and about how we have to have laws and we have to have people to enforce the laws. Now, I will be the first to admit we have had a policing problem in our country, and that is not in any way to be disrespectful to our men and women that protect us. I would suggest to you that probably 97% of, and all quotes or all statistics are made up on the spot, right? The overwhelming majority of people in law enforcement are good people just trying to get home to their family at night, and I support that. And I thank them for what they do to allow me and my family to sleep under the cover of the security in which they provide. But this song is not an anti-police song. This song is more about, hey, like we spent 5 times more on space exploration than we did law enforcement. It's about priorities and things of that nature. And maybe that song will give you a different context, even though it's, goodness, what is it, 35 years old now. But you go back and listen to that and you begin to realize, granted, there's a delicate balance to things, but nothing is more important. And my dad worked for the federal government for 33 years. And one of the days we had our biggest political debate, and my dad was very, very, very well educated on how government worked. And so when he got upset about something, I paid special attention to it. And we were having some discussion one day. And he asked me, he said, what is the most important job that the government has? And I got it right on the first question, the first answer. My first guess is, it's the military. And he goes, no, yes, it's military, but it's the defense of its citizens. That is the most important job in government, the defense of our citizens. Now that, of course, takes a lot of different faces, right? I mean, you got to have the Food and Drug Administration to protect us. You got to have the military, you got to have law enforcement, you got a fire department. You got to do things to protect our citizens. Everything else beyond that is extra. But you have to protect our citizens. And there have been so many times in the American history where we have gotten our priorities out of line, and I would suggest we have them out of line right now. One of the things that breaks my heart when I go places, and I'm in major cities, and I see so many people with nowhere to go. Now, some of those people are there with the product of their own decisions, the consequences of their own actions. I understand that aspect of it. But I also know this, that rather than us spending billions of dollars in humanitarian aid around the world, we need to save some of that money for our people here in America. That's just my take. Number 3, another song, very critical, probably the greatest protest song of the 60s and 70s in my estimation. And we played at Dudy Noble Field. And I always mention to the young bucks, I said, guys, you don't know the story behind this song, let me tell you. It's Fortunate Son from CCR. And if you go back and do your research, you can see that there was a lot of this too. It's like, the kids like me and you, those of us that grew up with, middle class, low class America, whatever. Our draft cards to go to Vietnam were almost guaranteed to send us. There's a good chance we were going to be drafted. But, the sons of the privileged got much better draft allotments. They didn't have to go. They weren't drafted. And that's what the song is about. It ain't me. I'm not no fortunate son. I got to go. I got to go fight across the world in a war and for a cause that I don't believe in because of the fact that I wasn't born into privilege. True story. Great, great classic song. Number 2, those of you that know me know that I love Public Enemy. And big Chuck D fan. Don't always agree with a lot of his political stuff, but I believe that Chuck D is one of the most powerful voices in the history of American music. Chuck D really opened our eyes to a lot of things that were happening in our major cities that maybe us in small town Mississippi were unaware of, and he did it in a very articulate and intelligent way. And I think as a result, his message was much greater received than some other people's, that kind of sensationalized and advocated violence and things like that. Chuck D, I think, was a pioneer and a legend in every aspect. And again, I don't agree with everything politically, but I love the fact that Chuck D and Flavor Flav, who was really kind of the Robin to Chuck D's Batman, they were incredibly aware of what was happening in their communities and did their best to advocate for those people. And I think in many respects probably opened up our eyes and our hearts, because there's so many times you get caught up in what's just happening in your own community, right? And it's true. I mean, you got to take care of home first. But I think that many of us were alarmed. You're like, is this real? Or are they just kind of doing this for shock value? And you find out, no, it's real. So a tremendous amount of respect for Public Enemy and Chuck D. And so it's Fight the Power. Number 1, though, and we've had this song on the show many times, and it is one of the greatest protest songs of my lifetime, and also, too, a song that people of rebellion have kind of latched onto. And I remember years ago, I can't remember what year it was, but they always have the Christmas song in England, and everybody votes, and it's like always something like off American Idol or something like that. It's something like that. It's something very corporate and commercialized. And everybody votes. This is the Christmas song of 2023 for England. A few years back, some great pirates said, you know what? We're not doing that. We're not doing that corporate sellout crap this year. And they voted Rage Against the Machine's Killing in the Name of as the Christmas song of England. Power to the people, man. I absolutely love it. I loved it when it came out, when that self-titled album came out. I began to ask myself, where has this been? Right, because I'm in the middle of all of this, this evolution in music, right? And there were a lot of people that were singing about their feelings, and they were so sad and so downtrodden and things of that nature, and get up there and stare at their shoes, and all of a sudden, Zach De La Rocha and those guys showed up, and it's like, you know what? Hey, we got something to say. We got a way to say it in a vehicle that would deliver our message unlike anybody else's, and things began to change. And it empowered a generation. A lot of people are like, hey, this is real. And Chuck D from PE is out with the Prophets of Rage. Like when Rage Against the Machine goes out without Zach, they go out and do some songs, and Chuck D is with them, and Be Real from Cypress Hill. But I share that because when I think about our generation, and I am a proud Gen Xer, and I mentioned this on the message board the other day, and it kind of, I didn't mean to hijack a thread, but it was on my heart. I wanted to say it. I think most people see Gen X as a different generation because of the fact that, we are kind of doers. We're a little more progressive, I guess, than our parents. And our parents are more progressive, of course. You think about our parents. They were all lived through the hippie and Vietnam War and all that kind of stuff. It changed America. But I would venture to say that every generation before me was probably harder and more determined. And I think about that a lot. Like, I think about my dad, growing up as a kid, sleeping 3 to a bed, working on a dairy farm on Augusta Road in Jones County, Mississippi. And he went to Mississippi State and got his degree so I could have a better life. Didn't even know who I was yet, but he knew that he wanted his family to have a better life than he had. Not that they were, people that lived hand to mouth, but they farmed the land. Got his associate's degree at Jones County Junior College and came up here and got a degree in ag economics and a minor in animal husbandry. Went to work for the United States Department of Agriculture's Farmers Home Division, which eventually became Rural Development, for 33 years because he wanted his children to have a better chance at life than he had. He didn't want us to have to get out there and work on the farm. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for our farmers. And I don't think there's nobody on this side of the fence that has more respect, because I come from a farming family. And I think about those things a lot. I think about what legacy we're leaving behind. But I think more importantly, I think about the legacy that came before me. And I think about my grandfather, Otis Robertson, being one of the best dairy farmers in the state of Mississippi. When they needed more help, they just had more kids, And I think about his father and the people that settled this great state of ours. And I think about what I'm going to leave behind with my children, And I have worked, and my wife have worked extremely hard to provide our children with a better life. You want every generation to build upon the other. And when I say that, it's not just about financial things. It's about being good people. And I come from a line of great people. And I'd venture to say probably some people in my extended family probably don't approve of, how I look at times or whatever, and that's okay, But here's what I do know. I do know that our children are watching us. Even as they become adults, they are still watching us at times to see how to act and respond. And I think it's important that we continue to set a good example for them in everything we do, and to remain very active, politically. Even if we're not getting out going to, rallies and things of that nature. But I think it's important for us to set a good example that even if we don't agree politically, you need to stay involved and you need to be a part of this process. And I can tell you, not me and all my children agree politically, and that is perfectly okay. And I won't tell you who, but you can probably guess. I've got one in particular that is probably a little more moderate than me. But she also, too, is probably the most passionate and outspoken in our fam chat when it comes to this kind of stuff. But I would never, ever try to argue her down, because I like hearing her point of view on things. I'm never going to say, well, this is how it has to be. There are a lot of times I'll ask her, well, tell me, why do you believe that? Where does this come from? Tell me the foundation of this belief. And I think that's good parenting. It's never about, oh, you can't do that. These people are idiots, I like people to think for themselves, especially my children, and I think that makes them well-adjusted, and it gives them the opportunity to have a chance really at life. I did not raise robots, and I hope you don't either. If you have ideas for the top 10 list, reach out and let us know. Best way to do that is to hit us up on social media. I'm on @ScoutSteveR on all forms of social media. Roy Samante, the keeper of the list, is @Dogmatic67, DAWGMATIC67 on Twitter, and you can find our great list on Spotify. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. I love Campus Bookmart. Chances are you do too. And if you don't love them, then you don't know them. You need to get to know them. The best selection of Mississippi State merchandise in the known universe. Be sure and check them out next time you're in town. Go by and see their smiling faces. If you can't make it to town, we encourage you to support a Starkville business by ordering online at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That's BSR. That stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. Now, that gets you free shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. That's campusbookmart.net. And Mom, I'm going to tell you now, on behalf of your husband, nothing makes us happier. Well, there's not much that makes us happier than you surprising us with a gift, with some Mississippi State merch. Ordered the new polo, ordered the new t-shirts, You want everybody going out looking strong as a unit on vacation this year, Mom. You know you do. Do your shopping at campusbookmart.net. All right, Dave Marchand kind of raised some eyebrows earlier this week when he tweeted out the same tweet that many of your other players have tweeted out. And people freaked out. We had a long thread over at genespage.com. A lot of people jumped in. Oh, Marchand's leaving. Well, that's not determined yet. And thankfully, his dad came back and kind of backed up my reporting that said that nothing has changed in his situation. And I think a lot of people don't fully understand how the MLB draft works. So let me explain it to you as best I can. You don't declare for the draft in baseball. It's not like football or basketball where you declare for the draft and put yourself in a talent pool. Every player that is draft eligible is just that, draft eligible. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to come to terms. There may be some guys they call and say, hey, we want to pick you. What's it going to take for you not to go back to school? And some guys will say, you know what, hey, coach, thanks so much, but I'm going to go back to college. I got to finish up my degree. I got some things that I want to accomplish on the diamond. And so, no, I'm not looking to sign this year. The Major League Baseball draft now is just 20 rounds. They changed that in 2021. You know, we had the abbreviated draft in 2020, which was a great thing for us because we had the full draft. Tanner and Rowdy probably get drafted and probably sign, right? But now with 20 picks, teams can ill afford to waste a pick. It's not like it used to be where everybody would get drafted and anybody after 25th round or so that still had eligibility left would come back unless they were, because seniors in college baseball isn't necessarily a good thing. It's true. It's true. You would think it'd be the opposite, but it's not. Because here's the thing. Like, we've had some great players in our past that have come back. And listen, I won't say any names. We've had some players that have come back because of a relationship. Maybe they're dating a girl that's a year younger than them, and they're going to get their degree. And so it's like, hey, listen, I don't know what kind of chance I have at pro baseball, but I believe I found my soulmate, and I want to continue that relationship. So I'm going to come back. And one player in particular, when he got drafted, signed for $1,500. And so he didn't get the head start at life, but you know what? He is still with that young lady. All these years later, he is still with her. They have a beautiful family. Again, not going to mention names. Some of you that played at Mississippi State probably know who I'm talking about. But there are a lot of reasons that guys don't sign. Now, Dave Marchand has 2 years of leverage to work with. Right? And so when you have a year of leverage to work with, the negotiating power is yours. When you have a situation like Jake Mangum, who was everybody's hero, right? And there were so many people that said, hey, when Jake came back for his senior year, he got drafted a lot earlier. So he improved his draft stock. Well, yes, he did. But that's a negotiating ploy too by MLB. What I mean by that is it's called a senior saver. The guy has no leverage whatsoever, so you can draft him in, say, the 6th or 7th round and pay him well beneath slot value and then save that money in your bonus pool to overpay at other spots. I think Jake signed for $25,000. I think that's right, around $25,000. But the slot value was significantly higher. That's important to understand. So just because a guy's drafted high, it doesn't mean he's going to get paid slot value. Now, when you're a junior, you're going to get slot value or close to it because they always know if they pick you and you decide to go back to school, then they don't get to replace that pick and they forfeit that bonus money. That's just kind of how the CBA works. And so it's important to understand that aspect of it. Dave Marchand could come back essentially risk-free because he still has another year of eligibility. And a lot of MLB teams don't like to go after those draft-eligible sophomores for exactly that reason because more times than not, they have to overpay to get those guys to come back. And there are other people that say, you know what, hey, this guy's maybe needs to refine his game a little bit. So that's an aspect of it I think is important to understand. Just because a guy sends out a tweet doesn't mean that something's wrong. And I share that with love and help and admiration for you guys that don't know how it works. I'm trying to be trying to be as informative as I can be about all of that. Now, we have had MLB.com has listed their updated their top 250 players since the combine. You know, if you have followed over Gene's page, I've talked to every one of the signees but one, Henry Allen, and I hope to get him soon. But so you've had a chance to read about that, and of course I've talked to the guys a little bit about the draft. But there's a lot of other guys too that they're just not going to be in a position to sign for big money, and they'll come to school. There is a chance we get everybody to class. And Dante Nori is the guy we're worried the most about, and the second most is probably Conrad Carson, or Case, excuse me. But all that I understood, let's update kind of where things are post-combine. And there's a lot of names you know. I mean, obviously, the SEC was huge this year. Charlie Condon, number 2. Jack Caglione, number 3. Those guys are big-time players. Of course, we played against both of them. Did a really good job against both. Of course, Cags with the walk-off shot on Sunday still kind of burns, right? Braden Montgomery, number 8. Jackson, perhaps Connor Griffin, a guy that signed with LSU, the number 9 pick, and the top high school player in the draft. He's going pro. I've seen some LSU people think, well, maybe we can offer an NIL deal. This kid's going to get several $1 million, and deservedly so, right? There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So we get a little bit deeper in the reads here. Number 1 for us, and number 25 on MLB.com's list is Durangelo. A lot of first-round grades on him. People love him. And again, this is a guy that people weren't exactly sure about coming out of high school. He comes to state for 2 years. He is going to sign. Okay, everybody needs to understand that. He is going to sign, and he is going to be a very wealthy young man, but we expect him to go in the back half of the first round. A lot of people love him. Now, the next player, Dakota Jordan, is at 34. That would take him out of the first round. We're hearing a lot of 15 to 30 talk for him, and he's right there on the cusp of that at 34. But one of the things I think that helps us significantly is when you begin to look at this, there are a ton of college hitters projected to go in the first round. And so then all of a sudden you start working through that and you say, okay, listen, Mr. Recruit, Mr. Signee, yeah, you could sign, for 5-6 round money, or you can come back and play here for 2 years and work your way potentially into the first round. That's important to understand. Of course, selfishly, we want them all to come to school, but some of these guys are going to have a very important decision to make. And Nori is probably the one that will get the most calls and they get the most action. Luke Holman from LSU, 45 there. Former Mississippi State commitment P.J. Morlando, and when he decommitted, people lost their minds and were ready to burn down the stadium and things like that. And I shared then that this kid's going to sign, and that's the expectation, that he is going to sign a pro contract. Will be one of the top high school players taken in this draft. Now, Dante Nori is at 48. Pretty consistent with him. Mississippi State's had an opportunity to sit down with him recently. And again, you don't know until the draft gets here. But we'll know pretty soon. It's going to be here sooner rather than later. All right, working a little bit deeper here, some other names that you may know. Ryan Prager from A&M, 61. Gage Jump from LSU, 62. Bryce Cunningham for Vanderbilt pitched a great game against us at 63. And there's a run on Tennessee players. And then we get a little deeper into this thing. And Cal Steven at 88. Cal is a guy that's really helped himself. A lot of people expect him to be, a third to fourth round type guy. And obviously a big guy that'll go on day 2. But again, I think this is a Justin Parker success story. And you can say, listen, Cal was a guy that was a good pitcher at Purdue. He became an All-American at Mississippi State. He's going to be a very wealthy young man here. Probably have a chance to sign for over $1 million when it's all said and done. And that's great. Great for him. And we love Cal. We do. And you do, I do, we all do. All right, I'm scrolling here. Conrad Kaysen helped himself, had a good combine up there. There's still a lot of people that expect him to come to school. But with the arm that he has, he was the guy that played shortstop and pitched. With the arm that he has and the fact that he can throw upper 90s and has touched 100, it's got a lot of people paying attention. He is the 102nd ranked player according to MLB.com. Now, I'm told that if he doesn't get top 3-round money that he's coming to school. And we'll see. He's going to be here. He's going to enroll for summer school. All the high school kids are going to be here on July 5th. And I think it makes it that much more difficult to leave. Of course, there's a lot of money that could convince any of us to leave, right? That's important to understand. Get a little deeper and here's some other names that you may know. Maybe I missed Nate. Nate has really risen in the eyes of many people too, and I think a lot of it's just addressing the health concerns, right? I mean, just showing them that he's healthy, and now people are like, you know what? Hey, well, this is our guy. Nate is our dude. We love Nate. Nate came here, and people forget too. Like I've read some comments from time to time from people that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I'm going to be nice about that as best I can, but. They said, we messed up trying to turn him into a reliever to a starter. Guys, he started at Ball State. It's not like all of a sudden he got here and said, hey, this is what you need to do for us. This is what he needed to do for himself to improve his stock in the draft, and he's done so, right? There's Nate Doan, 165 on the list. Now 165, safely in the top 200. And, of course, we expect him to be a day 2 pick. Hunter Hines there at 174, and people would say, but Steve, why is he so low? Well, a lot of it's just projectability, position-wise. Where does he play? Is he a big league hitter? You better believe it. And listen, they'll work with him some too, especially on that left-handed changeup. The changeup has kind of been more so than the breaking ball. He's got a pretty good eye for the slider, but the changeup away has been a challenge for him. But Hunter is going to sign, barring something totally unforeseen. And now we're just rooting for these guys, right? We're just rooting for them to get the most money they can possibly get. And it just really adds to the Mississippi State legacy. Now, another player that went to the Combine last week, one of our signees, is Cato Leary from Farragut, Tennessee, 191. 191 in the top 250. And that's a name that's been there for a while, but there's not much risk about him going pro. I know that he's rated pretty high, and that's a good thing for us, but we do expect to get him to campus. And that Farragut team, too, they a lot of people believe that was the best team in Tennessee high school history. They had 16 seniors, and all 16 of them signed a scholarship opportunity on signing day. 3 of those young men, right outside of Knoxville, are headed to Mississippi State. Lucas Buckner, Landis Davila, and then Cato Leary. Really excited to get him. And then one of our most recent commitments, Charlie Foster, another guy that was invited to the Combine, now ranked 210, left-handed pitcher out of Brookwood, Georgia. A guy that was originally committed to Georgia. Some things happened on the financial aid side. They didn't come through with that. He asked out of his national letter of intent, ended up taking 5 visits, chose Mississippi State. And there's a lot of people out there that will tell you we're just getting kids by default. That's just not true. We're having to out-recruit a lot of people, and Charlie Foster was one of those. We really had to battle for him. He heard from just about every ACC and SEC team and then took those 5 visits and had over a dozen offers after asking out of his letter of intent from Georgia. That's a good get for us. It's a big arm. And we certainly expect him to come to school, too. Of course, he's from a family, too, that doesn't have to sign for peanuts. He's a guy, too, that could potentially come here for 2 years and then work his way up probably into the top 50. He is that talented. And so I just want to keep you guys abreast of that, and we'll do it again as we get closer to the draft. But I think it's important to kind of understand there's a couple things that are missing here. Dave Mershon is not in this list. Now, that's not to say that he couldn't be drafted in the top 250 picks, because you've got some of these guys that are ranked in the top 250 that are not going to sign. But Dave Mershon didn't get invited to the Combine, and then Dave's not listed in the top 250. And you had, I think, 319 players that went to the Combine. And Dave didn't get one of those invites. And so that's kind of representative of how pro teams kind of view these players. And there are some guys that didn't go to the Combine, right? Or some guys that got invited and didn't go. But I just share that I don't think Mershon is going to get the kind of money that would make him forgo his junior year. But, I don't know what he's thinking. But talking to some MLB scouts, a lot of people would like to see him come back, and there are some people in his camp that are encouraging him to go back to school for another year. And part of it, too, is like a lot of people just don't think that he profiles as a switch hitter on the next level, and that he needs to kind of prove that he can hit the right-handed breaking ball from the right-handed side of the plate. So that's always something to consider, too. I don't know if that works for him at Mississippi State. I think he's just too valuable to us as a switch hitter. But, yeah, there's a lot of people. They're going to be overcritical with this kind of stuff because they're writing big checks. You know, it's not like, okay, we're just going to pick a kid and hope for the best. I mean, they're going to have to pay some significant money to get this guy to go to play pro ball. So they got to be 100% sure about him. And I know the Yankees have been on him pretty hard. And they obviously are willing to pay a little bit over slot when they have the money available. But there is a bonus pool that there is a limit to what they can pay. It's not like it used to be where they could just write all the checks in the world. But it's just something to be thinking about. Now, final segment show, we're going to talk a little bit about the portal. But if you have followed it all this week with my coverage of our signing class, I think you likely feel better about the signing class because we get so wrapped up in our portal recruiting conversation. Sometimes we forget that there's another vehicle that guys can get here, and that's through the traditional recruiting process. And these guys have signed national letters of intent, and the high school guys are expected to be here July 5th. And then the junior college guys and the portal guys will come in August. And so just kind of running it back for you. Charlie Foster, of course, we just kind of discussed him. That's a very, very big get. We beat a lot of schools for him. Henry Allen from Auburn, another guy that was highly recruited. I haven't had a chance to speak to him yet. We've traded some messages, just haven't been able to get together. He's the last of the signees I've got left to interview. Conrad Kaysen listed as a shortstop, but we expect him to be a pitcher for us. And again, that's a guy too. These are guys too, kind of the last hurrah in many respects. So maybe the next class will be. You had guys that were committing as freshmen and sophomores, but it's pretty safe to say that we're on the right kids when we get them committed and then they blossom into MLB prospects. So those are the kinds of guys you need. Those guys to come to school, to catch the LSUs and Tennessees and people like that. It's just true. By Dante Nori, he's well documented. Spoke to Heath Whitlock. It's an outfielder out of Stars Mill, another guy pretty highly recruited. Braden Booth was the guy that was named first-team All-American, high school All-American last week by Perfect Game. That's a talented guy, too, that we expect to pitch as a freshman. Maybe it's midweek, maybe it's a middle relief on weekends, but that's a guy that should be able to help us get electric stuff. Ryan McPherson, right-handed pitcher out of North Broward, had a chance to talk to him a little bit, too. Another guy that's extremely excited to get here, did some big things for them. Topher Jones from Hernando. Another guy, maybe didn't have the best year offensively, but he is a guy that plays, really good defense. And, I'm interested to see what Gotro can do with him once you get him on campus. We spoke about Kate O'Leary. Lucas Buckner, of course, his dad, Matt Buckner, is the head coach at Farragut, Tennessee. And so, and again, we got 3 of their players coming here, including the coach's son. And that's a program that's won 3 consecutive state championships. They won 13 in all. And so that's a good program right there in the backyard of the Tennessee program that we were able to go in there and get some kids that had offers from Tennessee. And so probably good for us to keep Lucas around and stay in the good graces of Coach Buckner. Jack Gleason, I ran that feature this morning. Jack Gleason, of course, the ace of the Briarcrest Christian High School program, won their first ever state championship this year. And Jack threw a one-hit complete game 4-0 win over Baylor in the state semifinals to get to the state championship series against Christian Brothers. And this is a guy, too, that had some inflammation early in the year. Started 10 games, went 5-1. The only game he lost was the first game of the year when he was dealing with a little bit of a tightness issue and was really good down the stretch, especially in the postseason. That's a guy that we're expecting to really develop. Eli Walker and Godwin Sanders had a chance to talk to both of those guys. Eli Walker comes from a family of Ole Miss folks, but I tell you what, I haven't talked to many kids nicer than him. He was super fired up. And he's a guy that should be able to help us. And whether that's be giving us 2 or 3 innings on a weekend or starting in a midweek game. And that's the thing, too. We can ill afford to treat these midweek games as bullpens, right? We got to go out there. And I think with all the arms we have coming in, we ought to have the opportunity to find somebody that maybe becomes your regular Tuesday starter. I mentioned Gatlin Sanders. His grandfather, Russ Gatlin, played at Mississippi State from 1964 to 1966. He is a utility infielder. We've recruited him more as a second baseman, but he has played all over the diamond. And a really good hitter. Not a big power guy, but he's a guy that hits for average and can run bases for you. I think he had 21 or 24 stolen bases attempts successful this year. I spoke with Ben Davis from Etowamba Community College earlier today. He is from Booneville, Mississippi. I think I put on the board that he was from Northeast. He went to Etowamba. But Ben's another guy, too, that had a hand injury this year but expected to come back and be strong. Landis Davila. I love this kid, okay? Landis Davila, also from Farragut, our third guy, and a guy that, we took late, guy that decommitted, and now we have him. And talking to him, this is a guy that has a very mature approach about baseball and about life, and comes from a winning program, understands what work is all about. Profiles as a third baseman, should be a great guy for us. JT, and it's Schneur. It's spelled Schnorr, but it's Schneur. JT Schneur from Pearl River Community College. JT set a program record with 12 victories this year. In all the years that Pearl River has played baseball, they've never had a guy with 12 wins until this year, and he's headed to Mississippi State. Kevin Manal, that's a real dude right there from Cloud County. Of course, originally from Kansas State, went to Kansas State, transferred to Cloud County, and has been outstanding for them. He is a guy that's going to get some calls on draft day. I spoke with Duke Stone yesterday, 6'5", 220-pound guy, played first base, but we see him as a pitcher. He didn't pitch this year because he's coming back from Tommy John. But this is a guy right here. It's a real dude. Committed to Georgia, backed off of that, and we pick him up. It's a great, great get there. Connor Barth, originally committed to Oregon State. We get him, and he wanted to come south, and excited to get here. This is a guy that was the MVP of his league out there. And then the team didn't have a great year. He did. And there's Robert Fortenberry. And his dad is my age, and his dad is from Marion County, Mississippi. And that was part of the discussions, too. It's like he had a working knowledge of who Mississippi State is and was. The guy went 13-0 this year in junior college at Weatherford. And a lot of people wondered if he's a draft risk. I mean, he's one of the top-rated junior college pitchers in the country. He is rated by NJCAA, is the pitcher of the year. In the entire organization, the National Junior College Athletics Association names our signee, Robert Fortenberry, as the number one pitcher in the country. And he's headed in. And I've talked to multiple MLB scouts, and they tell me he just doesn't profile like a guy that's going to get big money this year. Needs to go to state. He's kind of a shorter, kind of a stockier type guy. Be interested to see what we do with him when Shippen and those guys get their hands on him. But you start thinking again, this is in no way to sit here and say that, we can ill afford to do well in the portal. We have to get some guys out of the portal on the pitching side. And I'm going to talk about that in the final segment of the show. But our whole season isn't reliant just on that. We have some other guys that are going to come in, guys that you're unfamiliar with. They're going to come in here in fall baseball and do a good job for you. Probably by the time we get to SEC play, you're going to know who these kids are, and you're going to be glad you're on your baseball team. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Just Google Stark Vegas Clubhouse. If you're bringing a large group to town, there's no better place to stay than a Stark Vegas Clubhouse. Instead of you having everybody all over the county in 5 different hotel rooms, or Bill and Sally are in this Airbnb, we can't get them on the phone. What time is dinner? When's so-and-so coming? What do y'all want to eat? Just get everybody under one roof. Got some common areas. You can sit around. You can watch some Netflix. You can play some board games, which is always great. Play some Rook. You'll never be the Rook player that I am, but you'll have a great time playing Rook with your family. Order some pizza, or you know what? You can stock out that full-service kitchen, and you can cook every night you're in town. The wet bar there, if you're so inclined to have a great time, have some adult beverages, and maybe mix up a cocktail and sit on that great back porch area, which is one of the best features, man. It really is. And there's that fire pit area outside, and I love it. Some friends of mine have used it. You will probably enjoy using it too, the Stark Vegas Clubhouse. And so when you Google Stark Vegas Clubhouse, you're going to have some booking options. You're going to have Airbnb, VRBO. But if you use the Evolve website, I can save you a little money. Promo code BSR10, that's the number 10, BSR10, gets you 10% off your stay. Beautiful Steve Robertson, 10% off. You'll be glad you did. And wouldn't it be great, whether it's a couples weekend, whether it's a girls weekend, guys weekend, friends weekend, family weekend, whatever, just to have everybody together. The older I get, the more I appreciate the times when I can get all of my children under one roof. And a lot of times we don't do anything other than just kind of play some games or be silly or whatever and just be a family. Just be a family. And maybe you don't have a home big enough to bring your growing family into. Well, let's all come up here and go to a ball game at Mississippi State. Or maybe perhaps, hey, you're thinking, you know what? Hey, Steve, I can't afford that big vacation this year. Why not just come stay this summer in Starkville and go to all your favorite restaurants? Go take the tour. You can go look around campus, whatever, relive your college days a little bit. Go to your favorite college bars because you're not overrun these days. Maybe go shoot some pool, have a few adult beverages, and you're 5 minutes away from the Mississippi State campus and just go out there and chill. It'd be great. And you're probably thinking, Steve, I never considered that. Well, that's what I'm here for, to educate and entertain. The Stark Vegas Clubhouse. No better place to stay in the Golden Triangle area. Everybody is worried about the portal. And I'm not. I'm not worried about the portal. And as I've shared with you guys before, we have 4 spots left. One is expected to go to a position player. Could be a utility guy. Could be a guy that could catch for us a little bit. A guy that can play third for us a little bit. Perhaps play in the outfield a little bit. And there's some guys out there, obviously, that we're on that have some experience. Maybe you take another outfielder. When I began to think about that aspect of it, I'd love to have somebody that can play a little more outfield. Because of the fact, when you start thinking about who you have coming in, Bryce Chance is your most experienced outfielder. And Bryce is a very solid piece, but it'd be great to have a difference maker. Now, Nolan Stevens didn't get the ABs he probably needed last year at right or DH. But that's a big, strong level swing right there. That's a guy that can do some big things for us. And I don't know that with all these arms coming in, maybe you don't just kind of use him as a spot reliever every time again and keep him in the lineup. This is a guy, too, is a pro prospect. He truly is. But you start thinking about that, okay, I'm going to have a brand new right fielder that doesn't have a lot of experience. And, okay, Dante Norrie comes to school. I'm putting a true freshman out there in center. I think it would behoove us to have a guy out there that can play some as a corner infielder, outfielder, because somebody, like when Stevens has to pitch, somebody's got to take over and right, and you don't want to sacrifice offense, right? And so I would love to be able to have that utility guy that can do that. Now, we've got 4 scholarship catchers. I know there's been some discussion about how we should take another catcher. I don't think you go get a true catcher per se, but you start thinking about, Ross Highfield. I'm a huge Ross fan. And if Ross is 100% by the season, and we certainly expect him to be, I think your concerns about catching are alleviated. But you can't expect that guy to catch every game. Jackson Owen's still around. Obviously, Steven Spalletta, and of course you got Joe Powell. And so I don't know that you have to go out there and get a catcher, but it wouldn't hurt me. I've heard some people talk about Brady Neal from LSU. This is a guy that can catch, a guy that can play some other spots. It makes good sense to me if we can get him. But I've heard that that's probably a Florida State battle. But, we'll see how that kind of plays out. But a guy like that, a guy that's just a baseball player that you can kind of plug in, like if you have a guy that hits a cold spot, you need to sit him for a day or two, or you have a guy get injured, have a guy that can be a utility guy that you can move around. That makes a lot of good sense to me. But all that understood, we're on basically a dozen or more pitchers right now for 3 spots. And 2 of those guys got to be frontline starters. We all know this. And everybody that we're on is taking their visits. And I'm going to just make a prediction right now. Barring something unforeseen, we're not going to get a commitment in the portal until next week. Because some of the guys that we are recruiting are taking their final visits this coming weekend. And so when we get done with that, then they'll start pushing towards a decision maybe the next week. And there'll be some in-home visits and things like that. Your coaches will have an opportunity to sit and talk with them. That's all a big part of this thing. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for Justin Parker, his ability to recruit, his ability to evaluate, his ability to manage a pitching staff. And everybody that I spoke to, all the kids are like, you know what, I can't wait to play for Parker. There's going to be some other guys out there that say, you know what, look at what he did for Cal Steven. Look at what he did for Gerangelo. And look, goodness, go back and look how dominant Nate Dome was in a non-conference. It's ridiculous, man. And I remember one of the very first conversations that I had, with Nate after Parker got here, he told me, he said, I can't believe you throw as hard as you do. And what do you know? They refined the delivery, and Nate Dome is going to be a very wealthy young man, and that is a Mississippi State portal success story. And so you can point to that, and And it just, I began to think to myself, what if Nate had been healthy all year this year? I mean, my goodness. I have no doubt we'd be in Omaha. And that's, I mean, nobody chooses to get injured. I mean, but it's the thing you start thinking about, my goodness. I mean, think about that for a second. Your opening rotation, the first month of the season, Nate Dome, Cal Steven, and Gerangelo. And all three of those guys are going to get drafted and signed for hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not into the millions, in about 2 weeks. When is the last time that we had three guys on the weekend all get drafted in the same draft? You can go do your own math on that. Obviously, after 2021, Bednar going in the first round, and Eric Sarantola went late and things of that nature, and Houston Harding signed a free agent deal. Christian McLeod got drafted. But I would venture to say that the group we had this year, collectively, better than that group. You don't have a Will Bednar, but I think collectively when you begin to look at that, that's the vision that you want to share with young people, whether it be in the portal or JUCO guys or whatever. It's like, hey, here's what we've done in just 1 year with Justin Parker. And listen, last year in 2023, Nate was the guy we always wanted on the mound. We all did. It's like, because I know this guy's not going to walk people. I know this guy's going to challenge people. He's got good enough stuff, to get us out of a jam. And then we basically navigated the last 2 months of the season without Nate. And again, I venture to, it just kind of brings a tear to my eye to think about, number one, a kid that we all know and love had to sit out and become a spectator, as competitive as he is. And so I hope he squeezes out every dime that he can possibly get in his pro contract. But I think you can take the progress that we made this year. And Justin Parker, if you've ever been around him, extremely intelligent, gets his point across. He's got this kind of alpha bravado with him. He can say, what? What if I'd have had 2 years with those kids? But we can do the same thing for you that we did with them. And I think that's the thing. It's not about a promise. You've got production. And you can point to those guys. Just look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. And again, I go back to this whole Tyson Harding thing. Man, that kid was on the college heap of college baseball. He was on a trash heap of college baseball. Our fans wanted him to get in the portal. And then a year later, our fans were like, bring Harden in the game. Let's get this thing over with, right? It's great. And so because of that, because of, number one, the Parker persona and mystique, the available opportunities that we have, and the fact that we can point to the development piece. A lot of people out there aren't even talking about development. They're just saying, how much money is it going to take? And that's an interesting way to recruit, because I don't think you get to know a kid just by asking him his asking price. What if just because he'll sign for a number doesn't mean he's a good fit for your team? It's important to understand. And so because of the fact that 3 of the final 4 spots are in the hands of Justin Parker, and I think if you interviewed everybody in our fan base right now, of course, familiarity breeds contempt. So Justin hadn't been around long enough for you guys to find some flaws to pick apart. But if I told you, hey, the final 3 spots are going to boil down to Justin Parker, you'd say, you know what, I'll take it. Because whoever he wants is who I want. And we've talked about that all year long. You saw it on the message boards. I want whoever Justin Parker wants. And then other people are out there, they'll admit they have no clue who we're recruiting. And then when they see a kid commit somewhere else, they lose their minds. Relax, take a deep breath, and put some faith in your coaching staff, and especially Justin Parker, because of the fact, I think, number one, I like our portal haul so far based on the available talent. There's not a Braden Montgomery. There's not a Paul Skeens in the portal right now. Somebody may emerge in his final week, and you say, hey, that's a big-time guy. We got to go get him. But there's not that big major deal. You can talk about Rude from ECU. That's probably one of the more coveted guys in the portal. And I don't go by other people's analytics because, and there's nothing against them, it's just such a new science. I don't know if we can trust it, right? And so I share that with you because I think it's important. If what we felt at the end of the season about I'm not going to worry about pitching because Justin Parker's got it, that sentiment shouldn't have changed. And so I just encourage you to take a deep breath and have confidence in him, and I am confident that he is going to deliver. Is he going to get the top 3 guys that he wants? I highly doubt it. If he gets 2 of those 3, we've done exceptionally well. He gets one of those 3s, we can do good. And if he goes out there and finds another Nate Dome and Cal Steven, and you look at, I remember when we took Nate out of the portal, some people were like, oh, I don't know about this. And now he's one of the most beloved pitchers of maybe the last 4 or 5 years. You know, I mean, so again, we're going to find some guys that can really pitch and compete, and Justin Parker's going to get it done. I have absolutely no doubt about that. I believe that without any question whatsoever. Justin Parker will finish assembling a great pitching staff, and we will be in great shape next year. And I think, maybe the sum of the parts next year may prove to be bigger than they were this year. Because that's the thing I think about with when you got the number one junior college pitcher in the country coming in, you've got a guy that set a program record at his school, you got a couple of all-state kids out there. I mean, there's a lot of room for optimism in that respect, but we need some stopgap guys who can come in here and really take over those weekend roles. And I'm eager to see this team on the field this fall. It'll be here before we know it, but I hope that you can come out and catch a scrimmage. That's going to do it for today. I'll be back tomorrow. And barring some breaking news, we'll talk more about football recruiting, some other things that are happening involving football. Probably be a football-only show unless there is some breaking news. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.